Okay, Johnny's often talked about niche collections, and this is a niche collection for me. It's an ongoing one, so I've not done an awful lot of research on it. I've known about it for years because it's essentially in one of our old councils and now in our council. We have just west of Amsterdam, New York, there is this shrine of the North American Martyrs, which is called Auriesville. And this is the history of where it came from and why the shrine is there. And for, not going to read it to you, but it gives the basic purpose as to why Scouting has adopted this. The National Catholic Committee of the Albany Diocese puts on an annual retreat. And what I'm going to show you is what I have of the patches and neckerchiefs and some of the other information for that. So what you've got back in 1951, the Sir William Johnson Council spoke to the Catholic Committee that they wanted to have a scouting activity, camporee retreat at Auriesville, which is the shrine that I had mentioned to you. And we've been going ever since then. And the scouts from all over the state are able to come to the activity. The reason I started collecting these is that my old explorer advisor had started a Catholic troop in our community after he gave up that being the advisor. And they started to go to Auriesville, and he ended up becoming a Catholic priest and being in the diocese, and actually was one of the priests for the Auriesville retreats. So I don't have the very, very early patches, the 51, 2 or 3, but you can see that I've got some of the early ones. And as you start to see, there's more information on them, that it's the Aston Boy Scout retreat, which meant that all of the units in the Albany diocese were invited to be able to come to this activity, as well as any other scouts. And what you can see on the far right on the top is Katerina Tekakwitha, who was the Native American who was martyred and has since been declared a saint.
Can you pronounce that again? I was amazed.
Katerina Tekakwitha, I think.
Excellent.
And as you can see, there were different type of activities. In the bottom and the center, you see the wooden structure that they have, which is where the actual religious services are for the retreat. Now, I've been to the retreat a couple of times, usually with the Order of the Arrow, which is invited there to be able to do some sort of a ceremony or some Native American dancing at that. And the structure that you're seeing the picture of in that 1968 is a large wooden building, and that's where when the scouts do the processional, and I'm not Catholic, so if I get this wrong, somebody can correct me, but they've got the Stations of the Cross that the scouts march to and then come into the building for a religious service. And frequently the Albany bishop is there, and if he's not there, he sends a priest to be able to do that. And then the last patch that's on that, the Bishop Scully, who was a longtime bishop in the Albany diocese, died, so they gave a memorial patch for him the year after he died. And I don't really have much to talk about on these patches, just to be able to show you some of the interesting things that you've got. As you can see, the one that is up here in the center on the top is the 20th anniversary retreat that they held.
Why a white flag?
White flag represents Christianity.
Thank you.
And obviously, what you see down on the bottom below that, I'm assuming that that is part of the Catholic Religious Award for Scouting. So many of these have either emblems from Auriesville or some specific items that relate to the Catholic religious activities. These are the patches that I've picked up. But the thing, what they're showing here is, and I'm not certain what this handshake of friendship is. I didn't get to that one to be able to know what they're making a reference to, unless that might be the dedication for the shrine itself.
If I can just offer a thought, it possibly means at that period of time in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of, what do they call it? When the Protestants and Catholics would come together, it was
ecumenical.
Ecumenical, thank you. The denominations coming together. I designed a patch in New Hampshire for a retreat, and we had the handshake, and that was in the 60s for the same reason.
But after I started to do this, I've got one of our scouters up here is getting rid of his collection, and I'm picking up a number of items for him. And in this material that he had a few Auriesville patches that I I do not have. And one of the items, as you can see down here, this bottom one, is the 55th anniversary. But on the 50th anniversary, they apparently struck a medal because he had a medal for the 50th anniversary of the Auriesville encampment. And I hope to have that and add that to this collection shortly. And they start to get more elaborate. They've got this one from 98 where they produced a back patch. And then in 2005 for the 55th anniversary, they also produced a large back patch as well as the regular patch. They also produced neckerchiefs, and I don't know how long they produced them because I have some of the early ones that they have. Obviously, as you can see, celebrating 1962, they're celebrating the Vatican II conference. 63, again, echoes what the patch was, and the same thing for 64. Those are the neckerchiefs that I have from this. I'm certain that there are more. They issued, as far as I know, a patch and a neckerchief for each year, and as far as I know, they're still doing that. This is our staff patch. I'd forgotten I had this one, and here's another one from 74. Told you it was the Albany Diocese, but in 1968, there's a neckerchief for the Diocese of Buffalo, and I'm assuming because it's the 8th, and 68 would mean that started in 60, and the one then for the Albany Diocese started in 51. So more dioceses than simply the Albany Diocese have used Auriesville as a retreat for scouts. I do not believe that they're held at the same time. I've never heard of that happening. That's from what the ones that I knew about as a youth. And then my old council, Mohican Council, in the mid 1960s, started to have a Protestant retreat, a similar type of activity. There was no special shrine or anything that they were at, but they did that for a few years. The design is basically the same for each of them. There were no patches that were issued, just the neckerchief. So that you go 63, 64, as you can see, they just changed the color for the border. 65 again. 66, I've never seen a neckerchief. As far as I know, they never issued one, but the last retreat that was held was in 1967. So an attempt for the Protestant committee to be able to get the Protestant scouts the same opportunity that the Catholics had provided the Catholic scouts at Auriesville. And I don't know the numbers, but I know the times that I was at Auriesville, they had a very decent number of scouts scattered throughout the property. And it is a very, very large estate, if you want to call it, that you can actually see if you're driving west on the New York State Thruway. Now, besides the areas having Catholic, there was also a very large Jewish scouting community in Albany in the 70s and 80s. My memory says that they have what's called a kinkus, but I have not been able to find any reference to that word anywhere on the thing for it, but it's an encampment for Jewish scouts. There was also one for the Schenectady County Council that had a smaller retreat in 1970. Finally, here is a series of patches which have other council retreats in New York State. So religious retreats seem to be a fairly popular scouting activity. Whether they've all been as old as the Auriesville have been continually running for over 70 years, I do not know. But this gives you an idea of some of the patches that you can collect for religious retreats. And as I said, it's a niche collection. It's not complete. It's something I'm still working on. So that is the quick down and dirty presentation on religious retreats.
So how many folks would come? What would be the attendance on stuff like that?
On the Auriesville, I would say that they probably have anywhere from 500 on up at least for it.
Wow.
It is not a small activity. And
Wow.
again, when we were starting on the thing, we were dealing with the Albany Diocese was at least 6 or more councils, which have all merged into the Twin Rivers Council at this point. But some of the councils farther west and others to the south are also in the Albany Diocese. And as a matter of fact, Mohican Council was split because it was the Plattsburgh Diocese and it was also the Albany Diocese.